All right, Brant, welcome to the World Class Dads podcast.
Hey, man, thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
Absolutely. I think you win the award for the best background during the podcast. The
It's not
beachfront view.
virtual.
Yeah,
It's not
right.
virtual.
Yeah, honestly, most people would probably think it is.
Right.
So first things first, tell me about the RV.
So, I decided to do this RV trip with the kids. It was the one thing I could come up with that I could actually have them engaged. And with COVID being locked down in California, I just couldn't take it anymore with the kids sitting in their rooms and playing video games all day. And so I was like, we're going to go do something fun. We're going to do something, substantial. And then that turned into, we're going to go see all 48 states and, take 6 months and go do that. And that's a huge commitment, but we decided to do it in an RV because when you're at RV parks and when you're in this RV, you're more connected, you're more engaged with people. And even right now, the irony is that, so we rented this big place in Key Largo. I did this big executive retreat. My kids are here, and being out of the RV and into the Airbnb here, it's like they've reverted almost back to their pre-RV days where they'll sit and play video games all day, right? So that's why we decided to do it. I got this big 45-foot fifth wheel and this massive Freightliner truck to pull it, and we're heading across the country, all 48 states. So
yeah, I've been following along on Instagram, and it's just
yeah,
it's incredible just watching the ride. It's like some people like my wife, that would be her nightmare, but my dream. So
and that was the way I was too, right? Like I was in that mode too, where it's like, I'm not an RV person. So this is not the way I originally designed it. I actually was going to use Airbnbs across the country, and I worked with them, and it was going to be a great deal. And the kids were like, nah, we won't see anybody. We won't meet anybody. Mm-hmm. So, and then the RV thing is way easier than I thought. It's just way easier. And it was like, I didn't need it. You know what I mean? Like lockdown sucked, but I had already worked at home. I was already working at home, and I already had my adventure sort of club working. So I could go do fun outdoor stuff all the time, all year long, COVID, no COVID. Mm-hmm. So it really wasn't about what I wanted to do on it. And that's what my wife and I talked about. She's like, why do you want to do this? And I was like, I don't really want to do it. Like there was lots of times, weeks before we left and we sold the house and everything, that I was like getting anxiety, thinking like, what am I doing? Like, I'm just going to give up all this stuff and leave for 6 months. This is nuts. But seeing what's happened with the kids over the last 7 weeks now, today's 7 weeks, it's a life-changing experience for them. They are engaged. They are enamored with meeting people and talking. They're become really good friends. They are part of the process. They plan. And at 15 and 17, they just would not normally get a shot like that with them. So it's been way easier than I expected from an RV perspective.
That's awesome. So did you have to learn how to drive it or anything? Like that thing it's like a semi.
It is like a semi truck. Yeah. Well, the weird thing about that is the same thing with a big motorhome, right? They don't really make you get a new license for it. They just give it to you. Yeah. So you sort of figure it out as you go, which is, I guess, the way they do it.
And you sold your house before the trip?
Yeah. So, we were at the point anyways, as the kids were getting a little bit older, in the house, we had a very large house with about 3 acres, and it just became like, it's a lot of maintenance. And as the kids got older, I realized like I'm the only one that's going out to play volleyball by myself, or, shoot the basketball. We had a horseshoe pit, and like I'd walk by if I was going out to the barn or something, and I would see the horseshoes, and I'd be like, no one's played horseshoes in months. And I would go shoot a game of horseshoes myself, just so it wouldn't make my brain crazy that the house doesn't get used, right? So that just wears on you after a while, paying for the maintenance on this massive property, and like nobody uses it, no one appreciates it. So it was in our mind that it was getting close, at some point we're going to be, moving or trying or downsizing or just something different. Mm-hmm. And then the market just went all bonkers, and the real estate agent was like, you have to sell, like this, you get over asking and all this other crap. So we ended up selling that, and it all like coincided together, and it was like, well, we're out of here. So
yeah, that's nuts. Is there anything that you've learned about your kids so far on the trip that you didn't know about them beforehand?
I mean, they're definitely more resilient and adaptive than you think. Like you get in your mind that if something happens to your kids, like that's the way it's going to be. If you do something every day for a certain amount of period of time, like that's the way it's going to be for them. And they're very malleable. Like the speed at which they moved into this sort of lifestyle and changed their thing. That was a big piece. And the other big piece is my kids particularly, I think a lot of kids, they just need to be challenged more in broader situations. I think overall, and I don't want to get too deep into it, but the school system is just really broken, like horrifically, awfully broken. And my kids learn more on YouTube in one day than the school will teach them in a year. So they are programmed for consuming information, and they consume things that they're interested in, and they become experts in things very quickly. And if you've ever watched a kid, how they're proficient in a video game or whatnot, like they can apply those talents into anything they really want to. It's just a matter of what do they want to apply the ability. I mean, again, you watch your kid play a video game and you try to play with them, you're like, holy crap, like, how did you do this? How do you understand the nuances of this game? Like, that's because that's what they do when they really learn. And the horrifically bad programming that they have instituted, particularly in the public schools in America, is just so antiquated. It is so out of date. It is so ineffective. It is so useless. The curriculum that they teach kids today in school is completely and totally useless. And I didn't realize how useless it was until you get kids out of that system and they, and you see how they can thrive when they're really into something different,
Yeah. I think that's a challenge for dads, for parents in general, is like, all right, maybe you're not like pulling them out for a 6-week trip across the country, but what are the ways that then you can challenge them and push them, push the envelope to help them learn those things that aren't being taught in the schools and those life skills that are going to carry them,
and I think that everybody's kind of got into the same mold, right? They go to school and they play some organized team sports, and we all think that that's the way they learn teamwork and all these other things and competition. And so we just go in that. And like, I did things a little differently with my kids when they were young. I started what was called the Saturday Secret Adventure. And it was basically every Saturday we were going to do something secret, but adventurous. And it was like weird things from, I'd create a scavenger hunt for them. We go to a different Chuck E. Cheese in a different city that they didn't never seen before. So that was exciting. One week I bought like almost like paper painter hazmat type suits and safety goggles. And we went and got a whole bunch of Mentos and Diet Coke and went to a park and like exploded them, like weird stuff like that. Right. And I'd rent a boat or I'd go take them fishing. And what I've learned over the course of that is that they learned more and had more engaging sort of experiences through that process than they ever did playing softball or on Little League or any of that crap. You know what I mean? That's fine. It's great. The team, there's a lot to that that's good, but I think feel too many parents dedicate so much time to that. And they travel and tournament teams and all these kind of things. And it's like, yeah, it's very one-dimensional look at something that you're programming into the kids, where we played city league with our kids. So they play a little bit of sports here and there, but we did like my daughter can rock climb and she drives ATVs and that kind of stuff was incredibly beneficial. And I think that that's sort of what I teach a lot of times too, about the engagement and the high intensity with your kids, is that when you create those things with you at the center, it bonds you to them, so they learn how to do it with you, and that's kind of a cool thing to experience.
What do you mean by that, with you at the center? Can you elaborate on that piece?
Like if you take your kids to a Little League game, you're in the stands watching them perform, right?
Yeah.
Even if you're the coach, you're coaching the rest of the team, and so it's creating the system for them. But if you're going to take them on Saturday, you're going to take them on a ropes course. It's like you're there with them doing it, experiencing it, going through it. Like when I created the scavenger hunt, it's like I went out that morning at 7 and hit all the stuff and did all the things and made the routes and printed up the directions. And then they got up and had breakfast and like, okay, here's Saturday Secret Adventure. It's like you're at the center of it, right?
Yeah.
We go fishing, Dad set that up. We rent you're the guy, you're the person that's the center of the planning and the experience, and you develop that. And there was a real moment for me, like one of those sort of like high five yourself dad moments was only a few years ago. The kids were at a summer camp and they went together, and we picked them up after the camp. Excuse me. Picked them up after the camp, and we stopped at like Denny's for lunch after, and we were sitting there, and they were just telling us some stories. And at summer camp, they do archery and they do carving and they do all the stuff. And she was saying, I went to this, we did a rock climbing thing, and I was the only one who had rock climbed before. And we did the boat thing, and I knew how to start the motor. And we did, wakeboarding, and I wakeboard before. And she was saying, like, people were so interested in my adventures that I'd been on and all the things I've been doing. And she's like, I got to tell all these stories, and everybody's talking. And I was like, yeah, no, my dad did that. We did it with my dad. And it was she said, word for word, she goes, it was the first time in my life I realized I really have the coolest dad. And I was just like,
awesome.
it was an awesome moment. Right. And she wasn't 8 years old, right? Because you can get an 8-year-old to say that anytime. She was 15. And that was like, okay, like that's cool.
Yeah. And how much time and energy and thinking through those Saturdays, how much time did you invest in just like making those memories? And clearly it paid off. So the efforts were maybe not always appreciated in the moment, but did have that lasting impact. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, and it's good for you too. That's what I find. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I teach this in my seminars and whatnot, not specifically to parenting a lot of times, but it is sort of tangential to what I'm doing, which is a high intensity lifestyle for high performing individuals, right? Like that's really what I teach outside of my presenting business. But so like I when I train professional athletes and we talk about this, it is about bringing the same intensity that you have on the court, that you have at practice, into your life, right? Mm-hmm. It's because physiologically, particularly as men, we crave and need and are sustained on competition, victory, winning, achievement, goal setting. Like that is our world. We want to be useful. We want to be good. We want to be successful. We want to win. And I always say when I'm on stage, like if I knocked on your door tonight at 2:30 a.m., you'd be like, what are you doing here? And I was like, listen, I got this baseball. If you can hit that tree, I'll give you $100. You'd be like, what are you talking about? It's 2:30 in the end. It's like, actually, that tree's only about 40 feet. I bet I could do it. Like that's your brain. And it's like, yeah, I could totally like we want that. And the problem that a lot of people run into is they only feel those moments of victory and winning and fulfillment and success and importance at the office, quote unquote, whatever your office is, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's where those structures exist, where you know what to do and you can do it well. And when you win, you win. And if you don't succeed, you try again and you learn. And then at home, you go home as a parent, as a friend, as a dad, and you end up being average, like that. You're just regular person then, right? And then what happens? At work, you're a superstar. At home, you're average. And it's like, that sucks, right? You're not going to
so much too,
and you're not going to like that. Mm-hmm. So then what happens is you look to others. You look to your wife. Hey, make me important. Hey, make me feel like a superstar here. And your wife's like, I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. Just take the garbage out, right? Yeah. And so what you realize is that at a guy in those things, you have to learn how to create those moments for yourself, right? Have you ever been doing something outside or some chore, and in your mind you're running a commentary, like a sports commentary, like, oh, great, folded it perfectly or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Because you're sort of idly kind of coming up with something that makes it interesting. And so when you apply that to the rest of your life, and those elements to like, how do I create something that I feel like I can win and that I can be good at and that I can be appreciated at, it starts to reinforce that feeling. And physiologically, it blends between what you do at work and in your personal life, and you do it more naturally, right? And so when you're doing these kind of individual adventure, I'll just call them adventure type things that you plan with the kids specifically, it's like you feel like a winner. Mm-hmm. And that is addictive. And I can remember the very first time it happened. My kids were, I'm going to say 7. No, they were younger than that. I'm going to say 6, 4, and 2, basically, right? And I wanted to go to the beach. We live in Los Angeles. I want to go to Santa Monica to the beach. And my wife's not a big beach fan. And she's like, I can't. I don't want to go. I just can't do it. Let's do another weekend. I just can't do it. I was like, no, I want to take the kids. I'll take the kids to the beach. She's like, you're taking the kids alone to the beach. 3 kids. I was like, you know what? I'll figure it out. She's like,
Yeah.
bye-bye. Right.
Good luck. Call me
So,
when you need me.
right. So we go down to the beach, and I remember thinking like, oh my God, like what have I got myself into? But as I'm parking at the beach, right at the sand, I'm going, all right, if Jeff Probst from Survivor popped out and said like, okay, Brad, today's challenge is you're going to take 3 kids to the beach under 7. You're going to stay here for 3.5 hours. You got to get in bed, and you got to get them all back into the car alive. Can you do it? Win $1 million. I'd be like, okay, how would I do that? Right. And so I just got in this moment. I was like, I am going to crush this at the high. I am going to kill this. And I went into like superstar mode, and I'm moving the things and grabbing the kids and diaper this and move that and taking them along and moving and getting food and entertaining and water. And it was like, I crushed it. Right. And I'm packing the kids up after, and I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, man, when I get home, I'm going to drive the car through into the living room and just throw the keys and be like, I'm done. I win. And these 3 women walked up to me as I was just packing up the last thing. And they go, I'm sorry, we don't mean to disturb you, sir, but we have to say, we've been watching you for the last few hours, and you have just been amazing with these kids. What you've been, I'm just so mad. And I remember thinking like, well, thank you, ladies. I am super dad. That's what I do, you know? And it was funny because again, I literally got home and I just threw all the stuff on the floor, and like, I never thought of it again. Right. Like, as a dad, like my job was over. My mom, my wife, you know, she's mom never ends. Dads can come in project specific. Right. And so that gave me such sort of a feeling of like, I like this. So then the next time I did something, I was like, I'll take them. And then it was like, okay, challenge. I'm shopping with the thing and I've got to find, you know?
Yeah.
And I just started to do that more often. And I liked the feeling of people, everybody, my kids, my wife, everybody be like, God damn, that was amazing. And so that's, it just built from there. And that's sort of the pattern that I followed.
That's awesome. So do you, as you're engaging in whatever it is with them, do you have to like turn that on, or is it just automatic now that like once you're in the moment, you're like, it's go time. Brant is going to win this.
Yes, it has turned almost automatic now. And it isn't just parenting. It's pretty well all things in life. You learn that you can create the scenarios to feel fulfilled and winning and accomplishment. Doesn't matter what it is, right? And a lot of times when I talk to people, I was like, imagine if you were planning a bachelor party for your closest friend or your brother, right? Like you go above and beyond to make it great for them. And you feel a certain level of pride when it goes well. Well, okay, so imagine if you were doing that every other day, or like that feeling of pride and success and appreciation is actually easier to get than you think, right? Like it's just a matter of looking at every task like that, even the ones you don't want to do. Like I'll use the example, like I don't want to go shopping on a Sunday with my wife to the mall to buy whatever she wants to buy, right? And so I always think like, if there was a prize for the best husband shopping at the end of this afternoon, would I be in the top 3? Could I make the podium, right? And so I think like, how would I act if I was going to be doing that? Now, that doesn't, and people ask, well, isn't that just faking it? It's like, well, you're missing the point, right? Like, it's not about that moment. It's about training myself to find a way to feel like I've done something successful or fulfilling, or I've set a target down and knocked it down, right? And it isn't about that moment. It's about the next moment and the moment after that. And so that you go into any situation, it's like, I'm going to win. I walk into a store, I interact with the valet. And like, if the valet at the restaurant last night was asked, okay, we're going to give a prize to the top valet customer, who was it? Like, there's a really good chance it was me. Like, there's a real, I'd be in the running, you know. And we went on a fishing charter yesterday. And if you ask the fishing guy, like, who was the best charter you had in the last month? I would be in the top 3 or 4, because I didn't have to mentally think I'm going to make that happen. My physiological nature wants to do that. It's like the way you would be in a competitive sporting situation that you like. Do you have to think about it? Do you have to decide to go be competitive in a game about? No, it's just like you like it. So you get competitive. I like winning situations. I like winning weekends. I like winning situations. I like winning parenting moments. I like to be good at stuff and win. I like to be told how much fun I am. I like to be told I'm pretty. Like I'm one chromosome away from being a caveman. That's what I like, you know?
So how do you sustain that energy? Because obviously you're bringing high energy to everything you do, and that's all talking about kind of those personal life things, but I am sure you bring this same level of energy, enthusiasm, the will to win to what you do on the professional frontier as well. And
Yeah.
obviously you've achieved a lot of success in that realm. So how do you maintain that energy in all the different areas so you're not like what you were talking about earlier, burning out at the office, quote unquote, whatever your office is, but you still have that energy
Yeah.
to spend.
Well, I think again, it becomes the difference between where and how you feel that level of success, right?
Mm,
And when you train yourself that the office is the only place that it brings you that feeling,
hmm.
you won't be able to get it other places. That's why successful, high powered people don't vacation well, because it's like they feel like that's taking a break from their life, from what makes them feel good. And it's like, that's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of people that are like that. And I speak about that a lot. And if you get into that mode, like it's hard. And I was getting in that mode in my own life where it was like the only thing I felt really good about was the pursuit of making more money. Like that I could see a path for doing well in, and I could see a path for what the next phase of my life was going to be. Well, my next contract, I've got to get more money.
Mm-hmm.
So here I go. And then it wasn't until I started to flip that into life on a personal side, which is like, okay, well, how do I have that same tenacity in wanting to have fun? I always say that I'm in the relentless pursuit of enjoyment.
Mm.
That's what I do. And as I'm mentally trying to get to the point where it's like, okay, the only reason I was working so hard for the last 30 whatever years was to get to the point so I could enjoy and cash in some of that hard work I put in. And it's like, okay, well, I'd never learned to do that. Most people don't learn to do that until they think they're at a point where now I can go spend my money, and they're 60 whatever years old and they don't know how to do it. They don't know
Mm-hmm.
how to vacation. They don't know how to do anything, right? And so I just switched that gear. So what you find is like there's no burnout. It doesn't work like that. Like the intensity is not a negative thing. It's like a fun thing. Like
Yeah.
it's hard to find fault in that situation because you're always wanting to perform. And so instead of like being on a week basis, I only have to perform these hours of the day, it's more the other way around. Like I'm on all the time. And then a few times I'll take a nap, or
Yeah.
I'll just like, I don't feel like going to meet this person, or, very rarely, like very rarely. I'm
Yeah.
pretty well just like, let's do it.
Did you ever face a point where you recognized like an imbalance, like you said that you were chasing that kind of carrot of the money and making more, which totally makes sense because that's such a tangible, goal to set and chase. And like you said, there's that path that, if you put the hours in, the effort, the work, you perform, you can get there. But was there ever kind of a slight nuance to that perspective? Was there a time when you felt like you were out of balance in terms of how much energy and time you were investing into work,
Yeah.
and then the life stuff or the family stuff got put on the back burner and you had to straighten it out?
Yeah. Well, I particularly remember it. I remember it very clearly. And I tell the story a lot. So very, very, very wealthy guy that I was working on with. It was from London. He was in Los Angeles. We were going to meet for the first time. We met at his house in the Hollywood Hills. And I mean, like the top of Sunset Plaza. This house must have been $30 million or more. It's looking into Jennifer Aniston's backyard. I mean, it's just, and I walk in there and I'm trying not to ogle the house, right? But it is beyond comprehension. It's so spectacular. And so we have a great meeting and everything's cool. And we have a few more meetings. So eventually we become sort of like close enough that when I'm at this house for another meeting, I finally feel comfortable to be like, dude, Greg, you have got to show me this house. Like, what the hell? He's like, oh yeah, come on, I'll give you a tour, right? And he's giving me the tour of the house. And we walk into this I mean, and it's one of those ones where the entire side of the house is glass and the doors open up and the whole thing opens and the pool is there. And it's like,
Yeah.
we walk into this
Straight out of a movie.
Straight out of a movie. And it's this huge bed and this fireplace with a waterfall. And you're just like, oh. And I remember feeling like if I could just get to own a place like this, I could just feel what it would be like to sleep in that bed. And I picture like I would sleep better if I lived there. I was picturing waking up in the morning and being so happy and appreciative of this, like the beautiful thing that I had and looking out over the window of the Holly, like you could actually feel how wonderful your life would be if you could own something at that size. And I said, oh my God, this is spectacular. And he kind of just turned around and he goes, yeah, that's pretty good. And he walked by, and it just like hit me like a ton of bricks, because literally the week before I had these two guys that reached out to me, wanted me to be on their podcast. They just, they wrote me this whole letter. They were just, and I was like, I can't do it. I'm too busy here, there. And they were in LA, and I was like, I felt bad. I was like, why don't you guys come out to the house and I'll do an interview with you, and and I'm here and we'll do all this stuff. This is before everybody was doing this on Zoom, right? Like everything had to be in person back then.
Yeah.
And I was like, you guys come out to the house. We'll do dinner here at the house. I'll give you, because they were just young guys that were, So I brought them out the house and I gave them a tour of the house. Oh, here's where the horses are. Like, and they were literally doing the exact same thing I was. Yeah. Oh my God. And I was going, whatever, right? And I realized in that moment that how I felt sort of like meh about my $3 million house was the same that Greg felt about his $30 million house. And I actually realized in that moment that if I ever got to the point where I had a $30 million house, I would still feel the way that I feel down here. Exactly the same. The having the stuff doesn't make any difference. It's hard to get that through your brain, but it's so true, because these guys, my house was the greatest thing they'd ever seen in their lives. Their whole entire world would be someday to have a house like that. And like, I used to be like that in my 20s. I used to think I could live on $2,000 a month for the rest of my life.
Right.
That was my goal. And so you end up blowing past those things so quickly, and and that's when I realized, like, oh crap, I don't want to be that guy. Like, I don't want to be that guy. And I started to take stock on where I was in life, and realizing like, hey, if it never gets better than this, am I okay with that? And if you can't say yes to that, you have a problem. Now, listen, if you can't afford rent, and you don't have a car that works, yeah, okay, those are all real world, I don't have money problems. But there's a very steep learning curve. Like, once you have all those things, everything else is incrementally better. And I'm doing this RV trip, and we were in Naples the other day, and I'm like, this would be an interesting place to live. And looking around, and like, there's $90 million homes in Naples and $300 million yachts. And it's like, it still takes me a little bit to be like, okay, if I could afford that yacht, it's not what I think it would be. It would be, the way I think about it is the way I would be on it today with my world in that situation. And then when that becomes your situation, it's over. Now you need it, So that's when I made the real changes at work and just in my personal life, to be like, hey, it may never get better than this. I have to figure out how to make this the best possible. What can I do today to make the people around me feel better? That makes me feel better. How do I make that my life? So that was a big turning point for me.
I love that. And then on the flip side, how do you maintain that level of hunger? Because obviously you still perform at a very high level. You're crushing it. When you made that pivot in your mindset, did that have any effect on the work you did and the success that you saw?
Yeah, to be honest, it made it harder. I don't work as much.
Yeah.
I don't take on new clients anymore. Like, there's a lot that I just gave up. I mean, basically my TV career, I had a production company and a big deal with major studio, and I was just like, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. And so that's a lot of money on the table, and there's a lot of work that I don't do. And so that, on one hand, I feel like I threw away potential. The reality is that I've made more money in the last couple of years than I did when I was working. And that feels lucky though. Like, to me, that feels like good fortune, and this happened, and like, oh, this company I consulted with, their stock went crazy and I had big stock options. And they're like, these things feel like they're random. And what I've realized is that's not random. You know what I mean? Like that is the way life is. And when I talk to people about this and changing jobs and changing careers and wanting to make new things, like if you've built the pattern of success and you've done that, and most people at a certain age have done that and they don't even realize that, right? Like if you're 40 years old and you've had a job and a career, like so you've been successful like for 20 some odd years straight, like there's no statistical analysis that could make you feel like next year it's all going to end like that, even though that's what we think. And so I always say, like, people who are hardworking, intelligent, willing to put in work, think long term, you can't get out of the way of money. You can't get out of the way. It will find you. It's going to seek you out. Opportunity is going to chase you down. It's not something that disappears. And that's what happened to me. It's like I was in the mode of like, I'm kind of going to retire. I don't know what's going to happen. Do I have enough money to live on? If I live this lifestyle, like I had all those thoughts like anybody else would. And then it's like, oh, right. Like that's silly because there's nothing you can do to get out of the way of this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Though it's so ingrained in who you are that even if you pivot on what that exact path looks like, you're still going to crush it.
Yeah.
With what, especially with the winner mentality and mindset that you have of just crushing each task in front of you, which I absolutely love. Can you tell me a little bit about your Pokemon Go experience and film and what inspired that journey with your daughter?
Yeah, you know, it was interesting because I did a movie called Why I'm Not on Facebook about my oldest son's sort of obsession with Facebook and wanting to get a Facebook account at 13. I wasn't on any social media and I was like, absolutely not. And he was asking why and couldn't really give him a good answer. So I did this documentary film about trying to figure out why I hate Facebook so much. Spoiler alert, turns out I was the problem, not Facebook. It's a whole thing. And then, you know, almost the same thing happened where my daughter, we caught her sneaking out of the house at night. It wasn't to go visit her boyfriend or smoke drugs. It was to go catch Pokemon, go walk around the neighborhood to hatch a Pokemon egg, right? And I was like, okay, and this is at the height of when Pokemon Go is going bonkers.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, something's weird here. I got to figure out what's going on with this. And so I went to do a similar type movie where it's like, I'm going to document my journey to figure out why Pokemon Go is such a thing. It seems like such a stupid game. The graphics and all these things are so dumb. And my daughter is obsessed with it. And like, you know, she's a 12-year-old girl. She's not interesting or fun to begin with. Like she's moody and all these things. I was like, how could she be so into something? She doesn't like anything in the world. And so as I looked through how people used it and did it, and I met people and all these people around the country that were using it, it sort of made me realize like there's something there that people are getting. And maybe I should just ask my daughter what Pokemon Go means to her, right? And it was the first time I had a conversation. It was on camera. It's the first time I had a conversation with her in a genuine sense of like, why do you like this? Like, why does this happen? And you can see in the scene where she goes from her typical thing, one word answers, no conversation. When I asked her what team she was on, and she said, and I said, like, well, why would you be on that team? And she explained it. And I was like, why not this team? And she's like, well, those people that's the different team. And then she just like lit up, right? And we had a 25-minute conversation for the first time since she was 7 or whatever, right? And so I used, for the first time, I really, you know, I'd been taking them on these Saturday secret adventures, and that's great when they're 7 and 8 and 9 and 10. But at a certain age, they have actual desires of their own. And so, you know, taking her scuba diving and all these things, she loves that. It's great experiences, but there are things that she wanted to do, and those were never part of this, my adventure stuff, right? Never. And this was the first time I realized. So I took her to New York to catch this Charizard or whatever this Pokemon was. That was you could only get it in New York, most likely, in this spot in near Times Square is like the most concentrated Pokemon thing ever. And so it was just like this amazing bonding experience. And it taught me to broaden what I do with the kids a little bit more, to be a little more genuinely interested in what interests them. And that's been a good system too. Like, you know, when Fortnite was a huge thing, I watched them play long enough where I thought I had a pretty good strategy. I don't play a lot of video games. And I was like, okay, dad's going to try and come on. And I ended up getting second in that thing because I learned how to hide and like stay away from everybody till they all kill each other. And it was like this moment where the kids were like, God damn, you must have really like paid attention to us, Dad, to figure this out. And then we get in this argument about like, was that a real way to play or was it not? Like, it was great. So I've sort of done that, you know, when the kids
Yeah.
get into something on YouTube, which they do, I try to figure out how I engage with them on that, you know. And
Hmm.
my kids now like to have meaningless conversations at a deep level. So they had a huge thing about what constitutes a sandwich. Is it two
Hmm.
pieces of bread? Well, what if it's is it a bun? Like, can anything be a sandwich? What if you put it between two pieces of lettuce? Is that a sandwich? Like, and so it's like, I was like, okay, I'm in. So, you know, we talked for weeks about this. And if I asked them right now, we'd have a whole new conversation about it. And, but to tie my other piece up, like I've learned that after the Pokemon Go movie, that's a win for me, right?
Hmm.
Like I won that interaction with my daughter.
Hmm.
And so now I wanted another one. Did I want to talk about Pokemon Go anymore? No. Do I want another win? Yes.
Hmm.
And that's what it became. Like, was I genuinely interested in Pokemon Go when we were doing this stuff with her? I don't know anymore. Like, genuinely interested, what does that even mean? I'm genuinely interested in winning that situation and using Pokemon Go. So it excited me.
Yeah.
If I got something came on my Pokemon Go and she was there, like I was excited about it because not because I like the process of catching this stupid thing, but because I knew that like, if I caught it, I could go have this conversation with her and it was going to be a whole interaction and I would feel like a winner again. And it's
Mm.
like this dopamine fills you like win, win, win. I don't like Fortnite, but I liked doing it with that kid that day, not because I like to play the video game, because I won. I won parenting interaction day. Like
Yeah.
Brett got the medal that day, right? And so that is what I like. And that's what
Uh,
interests me. So now when my kids have an interest, I don't have to pretend to be interested. I'm interested because I know it will lead to a win. And that's what I'm looking for. And
yeah.
it's like fantastic, you know?
And it's a skill set of engaging with your kids, and you've trained
Right.
it, and you've got that, you know, what motivates you to be able to get into that mode. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I absolutely love that. Is there any advice that you would give to a new dad who's just getting started in their parenting journey and they're, you know, sitting there clueless, holding that little nugget that just entered the world? Any
I
wisdom you'd
mean,
impart?
listen, on a physical side, on the literal side, the kids are so much more resilient
Mm.
and bulletproof than you think. And as a first time parent, you're an asshole. And as a second time parent, you realize what an asshole you were. Basically, that's, you know what I mean? I tell people that all the time. Wait till you have a second kid, then you'll realize what a dipshit you actually were, right?
Just in
And all
terms
the,
of what you didn't
just,
know.
it's just the overprotectiveness and the
Okay.
sterilizing and the clean and every peep they make. Oh, you know, like it's just,
Yeah.
it's built in first time parent nuts. And then by the second kid, you're like rinse it off. By the third kid, you're picking it up off the ground, shove it in their face. Like that's pretty clear. But that stuff is all you figure that out. It's more about as a parent to not focus your attention on the impacts of the future for them, putting so much emphasis on like what schools they get into and their homework and all that stuff is great, but equally as value is the relationship you create with them and the ability for them to meet new people and to engage and like all of these what we call soft skills, which is silly that they're called soft skills. Like you can be responsible for that as well,
Mm.
right? Like encouraging them to achieve more and to perform better inside the system that already exists, whether you're there or not, is weak. You know what I mean? That's small ball.
Mm.
And I see a lot of that, right? Is that if you weren't there, your daughter or your son is going to go through school. They're going to get grades. They'll probably get pretty good grades. They're going to apply to colleges. They're going to get into it. Okay, so you can be involved in all that, and maybe they get a couple extra grades because you poke and prod and hound them, and maybe you get them to pay attention to their extracurricular stuff so they get better applications. Maybe they get a slightly better college. But like the impact you have in that process is actually minimal, and the return on that investment is like, okay, so they got into a slightly better college. Like in today's world, how much does that really mean
Right.
now? Like it's a diminishing return. Whereas impacting their lives on other elements. And I give you a good example. We have every single non-citizen in the United States at 13 years old entering high school. Every single one goes through high school. And we could teach every single citizen at that age basic first aid, CPR, and sort of like paramedic skills, right? And so you could have that as a course. And at the time you graduate high school, we could have the entire basically society at paramedic grade medical ability. How much better would our society be if everybody had that training, right? How many people would be saved? Like, and we could do that in a snap of fingers, add that course to the high school curriculum if we value that. Instead, my kid has to take trigonometry, which is just so stupid it's hard to even explain. Okay. Well, you could teach that to your kids, right? Like you could make that a priority and you could teach them that.
Right.
Not send them to a class, you know what I mean? Not get them, but you could actually do it. Either learn it yourself and then go teach them or take the class together. And the impact of that on them is exponential. Helping them go through the system that already exists is minimal impact. Those type of things are exponential impacts because not only does it bond you with them in those experiences, but equips them in the sort of life skills that I can guarantee school is not going to do that, right?
Right.
All the financial elements in the world. The kids in high school do not know how to handle credit cards. They don't know how to get mortgages. They don't know what a car loan is. They don't know. None of those things are taught. And it's like, again. And so then you have all of these other things in life that the school, and it's like focusing in on that process will be a higher rate of return than anything, like I said, putting your efforts into helping them in their soccer team. School soccer is like, it's great, but is your kid going to play professional soccer? Are they going to play Div 1? Like, do you know what that's really going to mean overall? Like, if you never showed up or paid attention and just showed up to the game and cheered, whether being a super active parent that drove them everywhere and bought, like, the difference in their life is like this much. Right. Like literally it's that much, right? And I see a lot of parents focus on that. They are hockey parents or baseball dads. And it's like, it's cool, but that extra stuff you do is like not helping overall. Right. You know what I mean? They're just not, the kids aren't built like that. It's all of the other things that make a big difference.
That makes a lot of sense, especially if you're trying to push them along to be more successful in that sport, that pursuit, then it's kind of missing the point. It needs, if it really is going to be something that plays and impacts their life and plays such a huge role in them moving forward, it has to come from them. They have to be the one that is invested in that.
You may be one of the 3,000 kids this year that's going to be a professional. Like, okay, that's different. I don't know what that's like. You know, you're raising a professional athlete, good for you. But for 99.99% of the population, that's not in the cards at all. And again, the difference between your active super involvement and regular involvement is the result is it's a small difference, you know? Yeah. And then all the bonding things and all that stuff you can get, you actually have a better luck getting it other places because most of those hockey dads and baseball moms and stuff, like the relationship is strained because inevitably your kid's not going to want to practice one day. And now you're like, but we've put so much into this. And and that's just, you're putting a lot of emphasis where you'd be better off to be like, not like let them do their thing, but take them go-karting. Like, I don't know what to tell you, like it just has a bigger impact.
That's interesting. I like that. And then it also, puts the ownership on you, but also the benefit of once you help create those experiences,
right?
You get those wins and build that relationship.
Yeah.
Brant, I mean, this has been awesome. I love everything that you've been sharing. If people want to check you out, follow along with the RV journey, where would you point them?
I'm at Brant Pinvidic on all the social platforms, or you could see the website at rejectaverage.com.
Beautiful. Well, I appreciate you, Brant. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for sharing some of your time on a beautiful Sunday morning when you're on the beach there. So thank you very much.
Right on, buddy. Anytime.